The BCP and the DRP are the two main plans, the BCP being the overarching plan. But we would also have a good deal of sub-plans, and they would focus on how we handled one aspect of that disaster. We would have a continuity of operations plan, or COOP, which would focus on how do we keep operating in a disaster. The DR plan would probably address how do we get the secondary site up, but what if the primary site is completely gone, or at least non-operational? How do we ensure that the staff can get to the new location? Do we have the infrastructure in place for them to do their daily work? Or have we determined already that for 30 days we're okay to operate on limited capacity and only maintain critical business functions? So this aspect of a disaster is something we would have in our continuity of operations plan. We could possibly also have a cyber incident response plan, but in most places I've seen it, it's part of the disaster recovery plan. If it is not, it would only focus on things that happens online. The DR plan would focus on our entire IT infrastructure, which primarily would be our data centers, both the physical and the logical aspects of it. And if we have a cyber incident response plan, it could also be a subplan of the DRP, but it would focus on what we do in DDoS attacks, what we do when we get infected by worms or viruses, what we do with malware, anything that happens online. In our occupant emergency plan, we would look at how we would protect our facilities, our staff, and the environment we work in the case of a disaster. This specific plan focuses on safety and evacuation. What do we do in a disaster event? How do we evacuate our staff? How do we ensure that everybody's out of the building? And this is why most places do fire drills. Once a year, you have to do a fire drill, because the more times people do it, they know what to do in that situation. And we did cover fire drills a little earlier. We have someone specified who's responsible for ensuring everybody is out of the building. We have a dedicated place where everybody knows to meet up. That way someone else won't re-enter the building looking for a colleague that they can't find who just went to the coffee shop because here was a nice break. We also have someone who's responsible for the meeting point. And we do the drills to ensure the completeness of the plan. We do not do the drills to blame someone if they make a mistake. The business recovery plan should not be confused with the business continuity plan. Continuity, how do we keep functioning? Recovery, how do we get back to normal operations? The BRP would list all the steps we would have to do, all the things that we need to ensure are in place for us to get back to normal business operations after we have recovered from a disruptive event. And what that means is we switch the operations back from the disaster recovery site to the primary site or to our new primary site. How do we switch over from the limited capacity back to the full capacity, and how do we do it as seamlessly as possible without any further interruptions? If we're a large organization, it's normal to do this in steps. We move one department back or half a department back at a time. Once the first half of the team is up and running, then we move the other half, and then the next team, and so on until we're back at a primary or a new primary site in full capacity. In the continuity of support plan, we narrowly focus on the support of the IT systems and applications we're responsible for. This can also be called the IT contingency plan, but it is very narrowly focused on IT. How do we keep supporting the IT systems and applications that are critical? How do we ensure that the doctors on the floor still can access the patient records even if our data center is down, or access their email, or whatever else for them is critical to keep doing their job while we fix the IT backend? In the crisis management plan, or CMP, we coordinate between the different managers in the organization. Who does what, when do they do it, why do they do it during the emergency or the disaster. And it is normal for the CMP to have subplans below it as well. In the DRP, that's mostly IT heavy. We have listed what we need to do to either get back to limited or full operations. This is the management side. What do they need to do in a disaster? What do they need to do to ensure the lives and the safety of our personnel is protected and the property we own? And then there's a subplan of the crisis management plan. We have the crisis communication plan. This is both who's allowed to talk to the press and who's not. It's also who's allowed to communicate internally. A network admin might realize that we're under attack. He would notify his manager or the IT security manager. The IT security manager or the networking manager would notify the director or someone on the C-level. And then there would be a predefined structure of who calls who. If you can't get a hold of someone who's the next in the chain, we have someone identified as secondary and someone else as tertiary, which just means third in line. So when the disaster happens, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And we would use call trees for this. Each person in the tree has a small number of people they need to call. That small number of people call even more people, and we ensure that the number is small so that one person doesn't become a bottleneck. And we do also assume that staff would have a copy of the plan at home, because we don't know if our network or our system is accessible at all. If they don't know, how do they know who to call? They might remember some of it, but we want to ensure that everybody gets notified. A normal flow would be something like, a network engineer figures out we're under attack. He calls his manager. The manager calls the CIO. Then the CIO contacts the managers and whoever is above him or her. So initially, it starts from the bottom up, and then it comes from the top down. Make sense? After the networking manager calls the CIO would then call the data center manager, the IT security manager, whoever they need to inform of what's going on. They will probably also call the CEO. And each of those people have a predetermined role of what they're supposed to do in the case of a disaster. On the IT side of it, most of them would just activate their teams. They call their teams, either the teams come into work or they join a bridge call, log in remotely if they can. Someone high enough decides this is bad enough to be a disaster. They will probably get the legal team involved. And whoever is trained and determined to be the person that talks to the press is the only person that talks to the press. And it does in no way have to be the CEO. But whomever it is, they have the proper training and they have the proper etiquette. The CEO of BP was complaining how he was the person that was most affected by the BP oil spill in the Gulf because he had to stop his vacation. At this time, 11 people were dead. Tens of thousands of people's jobs were in danger. But he had to stop his vacation. So clearly, he was not the right choice. And since we have the plant assigned already, we know which managers and directors and C-level is important to tell about this first. We assume the CIO has been told by now. He or she activates all the other IT managers, as well as the CEO. The CEO then activates the important other people on the C-level. At this point, it might not make sense to tell the accounting department. We just need to make sure that if we have a disaster that's bad enough, they know by Monday or by morning not to show up at the old facility. Just like we do with the disaster, we focus on the critical people first, and then we let everybody else know after. And if you're responsible for contacting the CIO and he or she is not responding, then you call the CEO or the CSCO, or whoever is the secondary and tertiary for that person. A lot of times it makes sense to use automated call trees because no one gets forgotten. But it should also not be an excuse for not manually calling people. If we have an automated system, where is that housed? Is it in our own data center or is it a cloud solution? If it's a cloud solution, we could probably assume that it will kick in. What if we have it hosted in our own data center? Then most likely, no one would get called. At this time, it's also critical that we keep information both as limited and as precise as possible. I have been the IT manager that needed to tell the CEO, I can't talk anymore. I have important stuff to do here. You know exactly what you need to know. And I will have someone else call you when we know more. Which is very rarely a message that a CEO is happy to hear. They want to know exactly what's going on, precisely how long it's going to take, how affected we are, how bad it is. But right when the attack is happening, it's not that time. We need to focus on containment and stopping the attack. Then we can talk.